I was afraid to stop drinking because I was scared that I wouldn't like who I was anymore. I was scared that it would make me undateable. I was scared that I wouldn't have any friends. I was scared that I would just become super boring and I would become a loser. The opposite is what happens. You are joining me live for this week's episode of Princess Uninterrupted, the podcast, and I'm your host, Allison Ziggy. I am fresh off having led a live event in person in Philadelphia. I've been here for the past 3 months. It's been one of the most incredible experiences, especially since going nomadic. It's been really special to find myself here because I never expected to. I've noticed that a lot of people who work with me come from the dry month, or specifically, if you're listening to this at the time of this recording, dry January. I have stopped drinking since 2022, July 31st, 2022. And that's been a huge part of my spiritual development and my spiritual journey, was giving up alcohol. I used to be a strong party girl. I used to love the party scene. I always described myself as having been down for whatever. That was my dating phrase. I also was someone who had struggled with anxiety for a long time. There's already all kinds of episodes about that on my podcast. And there's also a lot of episodes specifically around when I stopped drinking, what made me stop drinking. The first program I ever created in my brand was a dry month program. I made it undated and it was called Alcohol Free, and it was a 31-day challenge, and then I later turned it into a planner just because of how much this had helped me in my life. The way that not drinking had really changed the way that I viewed myself. It changed the dynamics in my friendships, and when I look back on the version of me who was afraid to stop drinking, I was afraid to stop drinking because I was scared that I wouldn't like who I was anymore. I was scared that it would make me undateable. I was scared that I wouldn't have any friends. I was scared that I would just become super boring and I would become a loser. The opposite is what happens. It helps me fall more in love with myself, and it helps me to qualify the relationships and to change who had access to me. It helps me to show up more authentically, and it helps me to love myself regardless of circumstances. I don't miss it at all. There have been, since I stopped drinking, maybe 5 instances where I genuinely would have wanted to say yes but didn't. It's not really something that I think about a lot, just because it's been so normalized to me, just to say no and close the door. I'm not someone who really describes myself as being sober. It's not that I have a problem with that. For me, it felt like this personal choice of just not wanting it anymore. I didn't like the life that drinking had to provide for me anymore, and I just found that after I removed it from my life and I would bring it back in, I just felt worse about myself when I drank. Even if I didn't do anything embarrassing per se, it just was really an opportunity for me to beat myself up when I was continuing to drink. So I challenged myself to go a year without drinking, and that was July 2023. And that was when I cut it out of my life for good. I went the full year, and then I just kept not drinking because it partially felt like I still wasn't exactly where I wanted to be in my life, but I also just got to this place where I realized that alcohol wasn't going to bring anything into my life. It was just going to create more problems. All of the problems that I had in my life, none of them would have been fixed or enhanced or solved by alcohol. The things that alcohol could help me with, which would be like socializing and not feeling socially awkward, those were things that I already didn't have a problem with. It just felt like there was no reason to really introduce back. I wasn't going to be really gaining anything. So this all got me thinking about when we start the year and we have these intentions and these things that we want to set and these things that we want to do. Dry January can feel like a really amazing fresh start to the year. I just wanted to create this episode specifically for anybody who's completed Dry January and where you are asking what's next. I'm going to be hosting a free masterclass called What's Next, and it's going to have a little bit broader of a lens where it's not going to just be Dry January specific, but it's going to be for people who are kind of at this place where you've either created the vision, set forth the path, you're moving in a certain direction, but you really want to actually get there, and you need support navigating in between setting the vision and experiencing the manifestation. So I'm going to be hosting an entire free masterclass with this, where we're actually going to be using tools in real time and giving you the blueprint for where to go next. So make sure to register for that. But I wanted to come on and just specifically dedicate an episode to anybody who has done dry January, is in the process of doing dry January. At the time of this recording, there will still be time left in the month for you to complete this, but this can also be similar to the dry month challenge on my page, something that you can come back and visit if this is something that you're currently working through and you're finding a lot of value in it. I find it really interesting how a lot of the clients who find me come to me after taking a month off of drinking. And I found this really interesting as I was having a conversation in the DMs with someone who was like, I really appreciate a lot of what you share. Your content helps me. And they were sharing specifically about the sobriety, about not drinking, and just how there's a difference between having fun and being truly joyous. And I hadn't even necessarily remembered saying this. This has been a few years ago. And I was like, thank you so much for sharing this, because this has been the message that keeps coming through. It's just speaking to the people who are in this state of sober curiosity, who are wondering what comes next. And I was just watching Tana Mojo's video. She has been sober for a year. And sometimes I do forget the ins and the outs of this just because it has been so long. But can't say enough about trusting these impulses and like these desires and these little questions that come up. If you're finding this on my page, please like or comment, because I truly think that this is significant. I really think that you being here right now and following your desires, your curiosities, this is what creates a life well lived, because it's asking these questions of yourself about what is possible if I were to give this up. I also shared on my Substack, like the post that I originally wrote when I first gave up drinking. It's a paid post, but if you don't follow me on Substack, you can redeem your paid post to actually read it. I wrote this phone note to myself in 2020 during the pandemic. The first time I ever went to a party sober was the first day of summer 2020, and I just got asked 500 times by everybody, like, why aren't you drinking? Like, it was like the thought of me not drinking was so starkly contrasted to who everyone had known me to be that it was very like weird. People were like, are you sure you don't want to? And I was starting a new job and I was nervous about it, and I was no longer on medication, so I knew it contributed to my anxiety. So I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And out of that, I wrote this phone note to myself, and it was either after that party where I didn't drink and felt really good about it, or it was a similar moment where I had gone on a date with a guy and drank, and then afterwards I was questioning my every action and beating myself up for having not gotten a second date where I felt like I would have if I wasn't drinking, because I didn't feel like I had enough control over the way that I was showing up. For me, I used to have the strong belief that I had to show up a certain way in order to be lovable and to make people want to be with me. But I was really susceptible to negative self-talk when I was drinking alcohol. So I wrote this phone note and I marveled about what would be possible for me if I were to go a year without drinking. And I had tried to do this before I actually did it, because I would tell people and people would just be like, you don't have to do that. And I would be met with everybody's reasons for why they wouldn't do it. I don't know that you need to specifically do this. I was still in this place in my life where I was really seeking external feedback and texting my friends and asking if what I wanted was possible, if it was going to work out. I created this framework for the masterclass that I'm going to be leading, and everything starts with an energetic decision. And there's this like graph that I made where it's basically like you have your energetic decision, and then you have the messy middle, and then you have your manifestation. And in this land of the messy middle is where lands like all the challenges, all the limiting beliefs, all the like crazy things that you're facing when you're trying to change who you show up as, like your transformation, this inevitability. And when I was making an energetic decision, I was like telling people when my own limiting beliefs were still so loud. They were mirroring back. You'd probably be fine if you didn't give it up completely. Why does it have to be a year? Why can't you just not tell anybody? But I found that unless I really owned what I wanted to do, it wasn't going to happen. I could say in my mind really casually that this wasn't going to happen. I'm just going to do it for celebrations. And then I was always finding reasons that we were celebrating. It wasn't until I moved to New York and I gave myself the experience that I had been wanting. I was going on dates with guys, and there was just this picture of myself that I took, like the day after a date, and I just felt gross. I just took this picture of myself and I was just like, this isn't who I am. And I don't remember if I had been drinking specifically with him or not. I don't know if that was related to alcohol, but I just remember for me, alcohol, negative self-talk, and like dating were all so intertwined that I really believed that if I stopped drinking, it would make it easier to date, and it would make it easier for me to fall in love, and it would make me easier to feel lovable. I also had this trouble reconciling. It felt like there were two different versions of me. There was like this tech girl, party girl, like down for whatever, always fun version of me. And then there was Ziggy, who I could show up as. And this was like the ideal version of myself. Sometimes you'll hear the phrase like higher self, or I like to use the term future self, but bring it into the now. I felt like there were just, when I was still drinking, there were these two different versions of myself. And in order to clear all that noise and reconcile all that and fall in love with myself, I felt like giving up alcohol was the one show to self that I could do as like an act of self-love and sacrifice. I felt like I did deserve to be rewarded for that. I had this perspective that if I gave it up for a year, God, universe was going to just give me whatever I wanted because I proved that I could do it to myself. And that wasn't what happened. A lot of the things that I still wanted to manifest did not happen. I speak very publicly about wanting to stay in New York and wanting to stay in my apartment, but it just not being financially feasible with changing career paths. That felt like a setback, but I just couldn't have imagined reintroducing alcohol during some of these really difficult processes. And you look at spiritually what was rearranging and shifting and like stripping away. I just wanted to face that from such a clear mind. And I was someone who would still smoke weed occasionally, but I got to this place where I felt like I was vibrating at such a high frequency that when I would introduce substances into my life, it would just create chaos that wouldn't otherwise be there. And it would mess with the way that I saw myself. And it would mess with feeling like I could show up authentically and feeling like I could truly share openly about that. I didn't want to do anything that I felt ashamed of. And maybe that's why I had trouble with the term sober. Not because I was like dabbling in other things per se, but it just didn't feel like what this was about. Like for me, it was just being like pure to myself and like being pure and true to my goals and pure and true to what I wanted. And I feel like every area of my life has positively been impacted by this decision. If you are someone who is watching this because you're considering extending dry January, what I've experienced is that it's improved every area of my life. If you're someone who still wants to dabble, what ended up happening for me is I would take months off every now and again, and then I would basically do that until I had a drunken night that didn't feel good anymore. But unless I had the parameters around it, I wasn't really feeling that good about it. Like for me, it was very wishy-washy. Like whenever I would go on Hinge, and it would be like, do you drink? Yes, sometimes, no. Like I felt like the categories weren't all there. And it wasn't until I made the decision, this is not something that's part of my life, that I gained so much peace. And the same thing is true whenever you make any decision in your life, really. I found that there is a delicate balance between keeping it to yourself so that other people don't interject, but also owning it when the time feels right for you. Before I told people that I was taking a year off, I just acted like it was because of the marathon. Before I would do cleanses, and that would be why I wouldn't be drinking, was like, I'm doing a cleanse right now and you can't have alcohol as part of it. In Tana's video, she was talking about how she did 75 hard, and those would be her like things. But it was interesting because I would do that same thing where I would take a month off and then I would introduce it back into my life, but then I would have some sort of negative incident, usually involving dating, and then I would cut it back out. And it wasn't until I completely removed it from my life that I had to actually face those limiting beliefs head on. What's so interesting is how I felt like it would like negatively impact me with dating, but I also had this like huge belief that it would make me undateable if I was sober. That would mean that I was boring, that I wasn't fun. And it wasn't until I actually gave it up that I received deeper relationships with like higher levels of intimacy. Dry January in so many ways did change my life. It was just like I was going through all these changes and I knew alcohol wasn't going to make them easier or better. And when my friend asked me to do Lent with her and give it up for 40 days, at first I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And each time that I did, I became prouder of myself, and I realized just what I was capable of when I set my mind to. And I wanted to create a pathway regardless of if you did dry January, if you want to continue drinking, if you are like, this introduced me to an entirely new way of approaching life and I want to continue feeling really good. I wanted to create something to help you navigate when you are in pursuit of a goal and you're making decisions based on becoming a new version of yourself. That's what my free masterclass will be, specifically a plan and a path to get to where you're going. I'm pretty type B, so this isn't about being super regimented and rigid and disciplined. It's more about how to create the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy in your own life whenever you do have a path, like where you're planning to go somewhere. And also just creating possibilities, like really starting to truly believe in the vision of your life that you're creating for yourself. I love the way that I feel. I love the way that I'm always fully present. It's helped me to be more of myself every single place that I go. And I just felt really inspired seeing Tana's video, and I just wanted to share my own experience since this is a really pertinent topic right now that a lot of people are facing. And I didn't feel like this was the easiest thing that I had ever done. It was hard to admit that I wanted it, if that makes sense. Like, it was hard to let myself want to be sober or to even identify as being sober. And so just know that you can truly create anything that you set your mind to, and that if you have the desire to do this, it's going to help unlock doors for what else is possible for you. I don't know if I'll ever have alcohol again. I might, but I also have learned through dating too that any guy who has a problem with it has intimacy issues with himself and must not like who he is. He must be really uncomfortable having a conversation sober, so that's pretty much a red flag. But I would say also that it doesn't define you as a person. I truly believe that not drinking is one of the least interesting things about me, and I really try not to lead from it, not because I'm embarrassed that I don't, but just because I think that it's through not drinking that I've been able to do some really impressive things. It was what led to my first new moon journal, which was the first physical products that I had made. It's what led to my journal parties, which the calendar club has grown so significantly. We're now in 2 cities, which is amazing. And we just had an event this weekend in Philly. It's what allows me to be fully present. Like, even on New Year's when I was with friends and they were drinking, I was more than happy to drive. I didn't feel like I was missing anything at all, even drinking soda. Like, I didn't have that urge or that desire. There's certain instances where I have run into resistance where it would be like something cultural where someone's like, this is like accustomed to drink this. It just didn't feel right for me because I can have sometimes like OCD thoughts, and for me, I just feel like it's easier to close the door and not really think about it. In terms of my energy, it's easier just to kind of put alcohol behind this door and say like, we don't go here, so that I don't need to really think about it or question what's okay, what's not. I'm just kind of like, this is not part of my life. And that's been what served me the most. I would have never committed to like fully becoming sober. I think that me starting with a year was what helped me to get there. I just really wanted to make this because I know that I would have wanted to see somebody as an example making a video like this and being like, you can still be hot and cool and fun without alcohol, and it actually helps to enhance your life. I just wish that somebody would have told me about all these things that I had limiting belief wise that I was so scared about. Like, it's gonna make dating harder if you don't drink. That's an absolute lie. That people aren't gonna think you're fun anymore. That's an absolute lie. If the only thing that you have in common with your friends who you drink with is that you drink together, they might fall away, but there's going to be other people who enter your life, and you're going to be able to establish relationships on like deeper, core, truer values. The people who maybe you do have those party relationships with, they'll reset and you might find new common ground. So you might be surprised to find what you actually have in common with people. In terms of making my dreams easier, I do believe that because I feel like I always wake up feeling 100%. I don't have to worry about hangovers, and I also don't feel anxious about anything that I say. Like, anything that I say is me. and I trust myself. The biggest thing that I've gotten from giving up alcohol is cultivating that trust within myself, cultivating that intuition. It's no longer there's two versions of me, two different expressions. It's no longer like I say something and the day after I find myself questioning it or wondering why I said anything. I feel incredibly proud of myself for that. And I feel proud of myself just for showing myself what I could stick to. There haven't been times where I've really been like, I want to drink, I don't want to do this anymore. Honestly, the only times that I crave it are when I'm out with men that I probably shouldn't be out with. If you want the honest truth. In the last year, the only time I'm like thinking that I like wanted it was when I was out with guys who got drinks on dates. They were like seductive in a bad way, you know what I mean? Like, this guy's not good for me. And so it's on the same vibrational wavelength as that. That's been like the only time I've been remotely tempted. That's hilarious. Yeah. But if you are like considering continuing it, I would find some sort of hobby that you can pair it with, some sort of external goal for yourself that you're working towards. I'm a runner, half marathon, easy. Maybe you want to do some sort of cleanse. I would just recommend coming up with some sort of social excuse. Not that you need to be embarrassed of this. I think this is really impressive if you are setting out to do this. I just found from my own personal experience, I took 4 months between deciding that I was going to stop and telling people about it. I actually really recommended that. And even in the note that I originally wrote to myself, it was like, I would take some time to tell people until you feel fully grounded in this so that they don't combat it. Ideally, you can just be open and honest with the people in your life. But as you're still gaining confidence in this, come up with a social excuse. You can also just say you're doing a cleanse or come up with some sort of like external goal, fitness wise or hobby wise. Like, I'm going on a trip and I'm just trying to feel my best, something like that. That would be the first thing that I recommend. The second thing, I would just say really celebrate your milestones, like document your wins for yourself so that you can see the progress and see the reflection. I would take videos along the way, like I'm this many months in, and I would reflect back and I would just talk to my future self. I would also just celebrate along the path. The third thing is just realizing that how good you feel along the process is the reward. So it's not like you're doing this so that your life will change. It's giving you confidence in your ability to believe that things can get better. It's giving you even more reasons to believe in yourself, and it's giving you even more reasons to continue to pursue the things that are on your heart as someone who is on a spiritual path or somebody who has some sort of spiritual business that you're looking to bring into this world. I didn't feel like I could bring my full authentic self to that when I was still drinking. And this really started for me when I was doing Reiki on myself the day after drinking. It felt like I was just using my spiritual gifts to get back to baseline. In my mind, I started to ask a question like, if I have to do this to go back to baseline, how much better would I feel if I just was always feeling good? I would be doing breathwork ceremonies for clients and I wouldn't want to drink the night before. So it just started to be like a next level evolution based on where my life was headed. If you want to continue to grow in this direction, you're going to want to consider giving this up, is what my personal experience was. I don't regret it. I don't miss it. I don't necessarily even wish that I gave it up earlier. I'm grateful that I got to have those first 6 months in New York where I did drink, even if I was a mess, because I had wanted to live there for so long, and the version of myself who manifested that was a party girl, like drinker at heart. Like that was an experience that I really desired. So I'm happy that I got to have that, but I'm really happy that I got to grow into the version of myself who no longer needed that to have fun and no longer like really desired that. So what a privilege and an honor it is to grow older and to grow out of certain things. So again, I don't have a desire for it. Will I ever drink again? I don't really put those pressures on myself. I just continue to follow what feels good and to trust my intuition, and it hasn't been something that I've wanted to do. So I wanted to record this episode for you today. If you are someone who is or has completed a month off of drinking, dry January, and you're curious about what it would be like to continue, I wanted to offer this as a perspective as someone who's now at this point gone 3.5 years. 3.5, 2.5. I don't know. Whatever the math is from, I stopped counting. I'll put the official count in here. But I think that it's probably been, will it be 4 years? Did I stop drinking in 2023 or 2022? I stopped drinking in 2022. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be 4 years. I just think that not drinking like helps to not age you. I think it helps me to feel really good about myself. Yeah, if you have anything you want to add in the comments, please feel free. I'll make sure to include other links to both the dry month planner. They make amazing gifts, and that's my most highly requested product. I'll also include links to the other podcast episodes that I recorded on this. And if you enjoyed this content and you're looking for what is next for your life and like what things get to look like this year and actually making your visions real, please check out my free workshop. It's going to be incredible. I'm so excited to lead this. I have so much that I've created already for this, and I've just been really tapping into the collective energy of what the message that we need the most is going to be. So I'll include a link either to the waitlist or to sign up for that masterclass as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of Princess Uninterrupted, the podcast. I love you, and I can't wait for the next one. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, all of the things.